Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back. Anastasia, Cosmic Astrologer, with you guys, wanting to talk about the full moon in Aquarius. Now, my mic should be working today. I tested it a couple of times. I do apologize. The last two videos I did, my mic wasn't activated. There's no logical reason. Mercury was retrograde, and unfortunately, those things do happen. So I do appreciate your feedback in my previous video, particularly that the audio quality wasn't the best. And yeah, I do apologize for that, but there's not much I can do. Okay, so it's now the 4th of August. Now we'll actually do another update just on the rest of the planetary shifts and changes and energies for the month of August, which, you know, it's not as difficult as July, you know, without a doubt. July has been a very, very challenging month for a lot of us. So we had, you know, a couple of eclipses. We had the new moon at the beginning of the month, and we had another new moon at the end of the month. You know, there's been, Mercury went retrograde. There's just been a lot of things going on, but particularly those eclipses, I think, have been quite challenging for people. And look, honestly, the results of those eclipses haven't really completed as yet, so just hang on tight, so to speak. However, stepping into the month of August, things are looking a little bit lighter. Now, I really just want to focus on the full moon in Aquarius, which is at about 22 degrees of Aquarius on the 15th of August. And this full moon doesn't really have anything difficult about it. I've had a really good look at it today and just tried to get a feel for it, had a look at its aspects, what seems to be speaking the strongest. And the one thing that I did notice is that this Sun-Moon opposition, which is the moon in Aquarius, the sun in Leo, is forming a square to the goddess asteroid Vesta. Now, that's very interesting to me. It's certainly nothing to be alarmed about, but I do want to unpack a little bit about Vesta's origin and, you know, archetypal expression and meaning and so forth. So she's the goddess of the sacred flame. She's also known as Hestia in the Greek roots. Now, Vesta has been in Taurus for quite some time, and she was conjunct Uranus a few weeks back. But I actually mentioned that in one of my videos and just what that meant. But Vesta is moving on out of Taurus, but she's still there at about 22 degrees with this full moon. So she's actually forming a square to the sun and the moon. So her presence is heavily involved in this full moon because of the square that she has to the sun and the square that she has to the moon. Before I talk about the full moon itself and how Vesta ties into that, I just want to, first of all, either orient some of you to some of her meaning or remind those of you that already do know a little bit about her. And a lot of you probably know that I do work a lot with the asteroid goddesses. I don't work with all of them because there's 50,000 of them, but I work with a handful, let's say. And, you know, I'm continuously exploring new things myself as well. So, look, Vesta her energy can be difficult to read, a little bit obscure, because her focus is not one that's necessarily seen out there in the physical material world. Her vibration really emanates within us and connects very strongly to our own sacred flame, sacred fire in our heart. She represents what we devote ourselves to, what we dedicate ourselves to, and what we might sacrifice towards as well. She's the goddess of the sacred flame, as I said. Now, before I talk about the square she has to the full moon, I just want to read a couple of things. She's very interesting because she has two rulers, according to Demetri George. Her affinity is with the sign Virgo and the sign Scorpio. And those two signs are quite different, but they're both equally as complex as each other, which really to me says the fact that she's ruled by these two archetypes, these two signs, really points to how complex actually her nature really is. She does represent our own sexual sexual energy, sexual desires, but not from the point of view of having sex for pleasure, right? Her sexual energy, sexual vibration, sexual meaning has got to do with basically with healing. So for those of you that don't know, a very, very long time ago, before the sign Libra was put into our system, our zodiac system. See, Libra wasn't around pre the patriarchal systems that came into place, for those of you that don't know. So that the space where that Libra holds in the zodiac was connected to the Scorpion's claws, literally the claws. Um, and that space then became the sign of Libra as a result of the patriarchal system coming into place, which needed that defined, ordered um, uh, consensus sort of perception on man, woman, marriage, and sexuality, sexual engagement, sexual activity should only be had after marriage. That's what the whole Libran archetype. That's why Libra was brought into our system, basically because of this patriarchal system that came into place, which has been around for a very, very long time. So Vesta speaks very strongly because when, upon her discovery, what then started to filter into our consciousness was the understanding of, because the sexual component, when uh, it was experienced outside of being married, there's always so many negative things associated to it. People are considered to be promiscuous, or people are cheaters, or people are all sorts of judgment goes on to people who exercise their freedom to engage in sexual activity with multiple partners, right? That's not accepted in our uh, mainstream model of what sexual energy is about, and of what this idea that man woman need to marry. It needs to be a man and a woman. So this whole patriarchal system has been a problem because it's created a lot of shadow elements which are suppressed within us. And what happens is this sexual energy, which doesn't have a free expression and outlet, is suppressed, and then it becomes a shadow and gets projected out there, which is a lot of the reasons why we see a lot of the crime that goes on around sexual actions, right? If I can just put it like that. So her energy it's so complex. When if you've got Vesta prominent in your chart, I really highly recommend that you read a lot about the mythology around Vesta, and just really try to start to get feel and understanding of what she's speaking in your chart. Because if she's on an angle, or if she's conjunct a personal planet especially, and an angle as well, her story is very big for you, okay? So she's ruled by Virgo and Scorpio, and Virgo is the virgin, so she has that the element of the pure virgin, and she also has the element of Scorpio, which was known as the consort, right? The one who was sexually experimental, right? Um, so just a few things that I'd like to say, which I think are very, very important, just for your own reference, if you have a strong Vesta in your chart, or if you're interested in understanding this goddess further. Okay, so these couple of paragraphs that I'm about to read now are out of one of Demetra George's books, and I'll show you the book in a moment. So here she's talking about women who have the strong Vesta archetype in their story, right? In the narrative of who they are. So she says, let me just find, okay, so for example, women married or single with strong Vesta emphasis in their horoscopes may engage in sexual encounters with a variety of men. Yet the nature of these sexual unions is by no means profane. On the contrary, the participants describe them as transcendent, spiritual, and healing. It is as if these women are unconsciously recreating the ancient sexual rituals of the original Vestal virgins. In those rituals, the virgins use their sexuality not to capture a husband, but to serve the moon goddess and bless the lives of her human devotees. Yet modern society ignores the purity of these motivations and condemns such open sexual expression as immoral and wicked, which is what I was just saying before about the patriarchal system and how people are viewed if they are, you know, sexually active with multiple partners. All too often, this condemnation is internalized, and our modern day Vestals experience guilt and shame over their sexual responses. So there's a lot of women on this planet that would have a strong Vesta and would be operating in this way in their life in some kind of way. But it'll probably be quite hidden and secretive as well. It's not something that's necessarily out there in the open. In a similar manner, Vesta type men, okay, so it can work, this vibration manifests obviously in a man and a woman, just in different ways. In the man, the Vesta type men possess a high degree of sensitivity to the sexual needs of a woman and a strong desire to enter into sexual union with them. At the same time, their virgin nature causes them to remain whole unto themselves and avoid long-term commitment. Now, this is very important. Listen to this. Consequently, these men are labeled gigolos, heartbreakers, users, or only after one thing. How many men have been labeled that? I mean, I've had that thought about men in my life that I've met, right? So don't tell me that you haven't. We've all had these fleeting sort of thoughts, based on different experiences and so forth. But once you start to understand a person's chart and the inherent signatures that lie therein and how they might manifest, you can really start to understand the soul and the human being in ways that's beyond the left brain and certainly beyond the patriarchal fixed sort of system that has these definitions and rules, right? Thus, a strong Vesta points to a variety of possible sexual expressions that include sexual denial. That's another theme. Sexual union outside the marriage, and at an extreme, promiscuity and prostitution. In these later cases, the individuals who outwardly express rebellion and defiance against traditional mores may subliminally feel a sense of shame and guilt over their actions. Just a couple more comments and then I'll get into the full moon. So from the preceding paragraphs, it should be evident that Vesta in the chart can symbolize either sexual freedom or sexual repression. Now, in our culture, the later pathology is far more prevalent due to the fact that women's sexuality has been stifled in order to affect the patriarchal inheritance of land by demanding unquestionable assurance over paternity. As we observe through studying okay, in short, sex without marriage, marriage is Libra, became an unforgivable sin. The word sin, by the way, when you go to its root, when you look into etymology and the root, it literally means to deviate from one's path, right? So although it's been drummed into and imprinted into our psyche through various religions, namely Christianity, as in not the traditional esoteric Christian teachings, but the more modern version of Christian teachings that use the word sin in order to shame people and make people feel guilty and bad about themselves. The word sin, meaning deviating from your path, is just simply what it really means is that the personality and the personality's desires have drifted so far away from the soul. That's really what it means. So to deviate from one's path is to be, not in unison with your soul. You've separated from that. And that also comes back into the teachings of evolutionary astrology, which are when you are looking at Pluto, which is the soul, what we're talking about is separating desires. The separating desires are the ones that actually cause us and lead us to have different experiences in life. And then the unifying the unifying desires that bring us back closer to source are the ones where we have more consciousness and awareness about source, soul, divine, divinity, unison, right? So there's less and less of that the more we evolve, essentially. Okay. So after that comment of, in short, sex without marriage, Libra, became an unforgivable sin, this in turn created an artificial separation between spirituality, Virgo, and sexuality, Scorpio, that has endured for millennia in the collective psyche. So Vesta is her sacred flame is so deep within all of us, and depending on what version of reality you subscribe to, depending on whether you are heavily imprinted by the patriarchal system, and all of us are to different degrees. When it comes to this Vesta sacred flame fire energy, when it's not being channeled and utilized in the right way, it's being suppressed, and it starts to create this shadow material that gets projected, which is really dysfunctional behavior. On the other hand, the Vesta energy can also create matters around suppressing sexuality, denying oneself of their sexual urges, as it were. But it can also connect to celibacy as well. So it has the devotional, sacrificial component to it. As I've read in one of those paragraphs, the Vestal virgins, they weren't virgins. That's what they're called. Their engagement in sexual activity it's like they were a vessel, right, infused with this sacred flame, which was incredibly healing and therapeutic, and they were giving a gift to people, as it were. It's hard for some people to accept that, and that's fine. I understand. Everyone has their own understanding or perspective of sexual energy and vibration, but this is just one way of understanding sexual energy through this goddess Vesta. Now, as I said, she's in Taurus at the moment, and she's forming a square to this full moon, which it's actually a T-square because we have the sun and moon opposite each other, and Vesta is squaring both the sun and the moon. Now, normally a T-square, it's, you would really need another planet there where Vesta is to actually call it a real sort of T-square, if you like. But regardless of it being called a T-square, she's still there square the moon. Now, the moon square Vesta is a hard aspect, right? It presents conflict. It's an internal conflict, though. And what it is the moon and Vesta are both trying to stand in the same space, as it were. They both want to express, and they both want a result and an outcome, but they both can't have it. It's like trying to put two corners in the same space. You can't do it. So one has to kind of give in to the other, if you like. And it is usually the faster moving body in a square. When two planets square each other, which is a 90-degree angle, the faster moving body will have to succumb to the slower moving body. In this case, the faster moving body is the moon, because the moon moves a lot faster than Vesta, and it's the fastest moving body, period, in the entire chart. The moon is the fastest moving planet out of all the planets, right? So in this case, the moon has to somehow, it has to succumb to Vesta's presence, what she's speaking through this full moon. Now, the full moon in Aquarius is not a difficult moon. Not, I mean, okay, well, full moon in Scorpio, for instance, right? That's, which I did a video on a couple of months ago. You know, full moon in Scorpio is super, super, super intense. But the full moon in Aquarius is not intense. It actually lightens things up. See, the opposition that it has to the sun and also Venus and Mars, but there's a lot of planets in Leo during this time of the full moon. I'll show you the chart in a moment. There's, I think, 5 planets in Leo and 6 planets in fixed signs. So that part of the month particularly is heavily entrenched in fire and fixed signs. Now, that's not necessarily a problem within itself, but the one thing about fixed signs, whilst they have the ability to give us that staying power to stay with something, right, to really, really stay, to really commit, right, and show loyalty to something, that's what fixed signs do. It can equally be debilitating because we can be so fixed and so inflexible and so rigid about any given thing. So this inflexibility and this rigidity, it doesn't allow us to maybe, you know, move through to the next stage, as it were, take that next step, because we're just so determined and fixed on staying with that very one thing. So it can be very limiting in that way. But on the other hand, it can be very powerful because a lot of people don't have ability to stay with things too long. That's just a fact. Mutable energy, it's everywhere, you know. And because of this fast-paced, modern Western world we live in, and because of technology and just, you know, social media, all that stuff that infiltrates our left brain and takes us away from our heart center, really gets us scattered, right? So this fixed energy is good on that level because it helps us stay with something that perhaps we've been working through. That is not easy, but with this fixed energy, we have that support, that power to actually do that. Now, and the fire energy is also about courage, right? There's always courage associated with fire. And in this case, we have 5 planets in Leo, which is all about courage. And also within the mix of all of this, we have the Lionsgate that's been open, and that still is, and will only technically be closing, you know, a couple of days after this full moon. So this full moon happens just a couple of days later when this this Lionsgate portal has officially closed, if you like. So it's a powerful moon from that perspective because of the moon's been building up. You know, we had the new moon in Leo, which is very much contained in that Lionsgate energy, and it's been building and building and building and building to come to a full moon in Aquarius just after that Lionsgate closes, which is significant because whilst we've had this opportunity, and we're still in it because I'm doing this video on the 4th of August and this full moon's not till the 15th, so we've still got a couple of weeks of this. But just try and keep in mind that whilst we have this wonderful opportunity to activate, you know, our heart chakra, our heart center, to download and receive blessings in the form of language, some kind of language that resonates and vibrates with our soul, with our own DNA. You know, it's the same force coming through. It's not like it's, you know, 7.5 billion different types of forces that are coming through this Lionsgate. It's the one same force and source, but how each of us receives it is going to be completely different, isn't it? 7.5 billion people on this planet will receive it differently because we are all so different from one another. We're just totally unique. So this whole vibration and energy in Leo that has been granting us this opportunity for our own self-actualization, because Leo is about self-actualizing, you know, finding that whole sense and center of being of who you are, and allowing that to shine through, and through the heart particularly. Whilst we've been in all of that and we've had amazing opportunity to receive, the moon in Aquarius, the full moon in Aquarius, is giving us an opportunity and is also asking us to now actually take a much larger, broader view and perspective on where we're actually pouring this energy out, how we are sharing it and expressing it. Because Leo is about my own sense of self, right? Who I am at the most strongest level. But don't forget that with each sign, there's an opposite sign, which is its shadow, and it's the polarity sign. So the polarity to Leo is Aquarius, and the Aquarius full moon is saying, hey, okay, you've had this opportunity the last few weeks to really embrace and embody this vibration of Leo, to create further self-actualization in your own personal journey, to activate your heart chakra, to release pain in the heart, you know, to heal the heart, all these things, and to potentially also extend more energy into your own personal creative projects, right? So it can be very, on a personality level, it can be very self-oriented, right? But in esoteric astrology, the sun and Jupiter connect to ray number 2. And ray number 2 is about the universal love and wisdom. It's not about me becoming self-actualized and being so self-absorbed in my creative juices that I've forgotten about the rest of humanity, right? So if we bring in the esoteric level, then this Leo vibration at the most highest level is actually about creating universal love and wisdom. So, and also Aquarius in esoteric astrology is ruled by Jupiter. And Jupiter is the planet that's connected to ray number 2, as is the sun. So here we have this sun-moon opposition, and both the sun in Leo and the moon in Aquarius are actually ruled by ray number 2. So we have a theme that's still continuing, which started back when we had the new moon in Leo. But from the point of view of the moon in Aquarius, we're talking about actually now being able to stand back. And obviously the symbolism of a full moon is that we have this, you know, clear picture. We have crystallization, we have awareness. There's this enormous light that shines, that gives us the clear perspective of you know, everything around us. Whereas with the new moon, it's very focused in a way that you're standing right in it, and you may be creating something. The soil is very fertile, right? And there's this ability to pour an enormous amount of energy. That's the new moon. But when we get to the full moon, it's what we created, what we planted, has now come to its full bloom. So this moon in Aquarius, this full moon in Aquarius, is asking us to bring forth this beautiful Leo energy and what we have further actualized in ourselves, what we have created, but how to bring it forth for the benefit of a bigger cause. You know, the later signs in astrology, meaning well, Scorpio could certainly be added, but let's just say Scorpio, Sag, particularly Sag, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. Those later signs, they are the signs that actually help us have the larger sort of understanding and picture of what the hell is going on in this world, in life, in your own life, in everything that you're projecting and seeing out there. The personal signs, the beginning of the zodiac, they're very personal. You know, there's no objectivity available there. It's all subjective. Leo is very subjective as well. But when it comes to a sign like Aquarius, we have crystal clear objectivity. We can actually depersonalize from our own stuff, as it were, and we can stand in a space where things are actually completely clear, illuminated in our mind. And you know, Aquarius in traditional astrology is ruled by, well, Saturn, depending on what model you use. Traditionally, it is ruled by Saturn, co-ruler being Uranus, but I more associate Uranus with the sign of Aquarius for sure. I've got a moon in Aquarius natally myself, so I know all about moon in Aquarius. And it is a vibration that really does assist us in deep personalizing stuff. And sometimes we do need to do that, because if we don't, we're just sort of standing so close, so personally close to the things that are going on in our life, and we cannot get that objective view and picture to it. And if we can't get that objective view and picture, we're missing the bigger picture. You know, it's just all so personal. Leo is very personal, and whilst it's been serving and is serving its purpose, this Leo vibration with the Lionsgate, with the new moon in Leo, all these planets in Leo, you know, that energy has risen for a particular purpose for us to activate and connect with it. But as this full moon in Aquarius comes up, it's, you know, that the message is different. It's, okay, bring your creative, you know, expressive self into a position where you can actually share it with other people, right? So it's not just about your own self-centered creative path. It's about using that creative energy for a greater purpose and vision. Aquarius is a visionary sign, you know. It's a sign that it's futuristic. It can see things way out there in the future before they've even, you know, happened here on this earth plane. So that's what the full moon in Aquarius is really asking us to do. And as I said, it doesn't have any difficult aspects to it. The square to Vesta, I think, might present an issue around, because apart from the sexual complexities that Vesta can point to, she's also the energy that can speak to where we are, you know, really dedicated on a particular path. And sometimes that can just be even in our own work, right? As in the work that we do to earn money, to survive, to live, etc. Her energy can come through that stream as well. But it has to be a path or an area that we are really devoted to in some kind of way. So the square with the full moon might just highlight matters of, you know, this over dedication or over devotion towards this work is conflicting with responding to my emotional needs, right? That's what we're talking about. We're talking about Vesta being the principle of commitment, work, and the moon being the principle of our, you know, emotional responses. So there might just be a little bit of conflict that comes up as this full moon squares Vesta, but it doesn't have to be anything that's really super uncomfortable or difficult. It can just be really highlighting to you and bringing to your awareness, you know, what is it about your own emotional responses and needs and nature that maybe you haven't been paying attention to. But they won't be, how can I put it? Because the moon is in Aquarius, we're not talking about classic traditional moon symbolism, right? Because the moon, you know, in exoteric astrology rules Cancer, so it's very mothering, nurturing, instinctual sort of energy. But in Aquarius, it's nothing like that. It's completely depersonalized, which is weird, and that's a good word for Aquarius, weird, because the moon and Aquarius, really, those two vibrations, they don't really have an affinity. They're very different energies. They couldn't be more different with one another, actually. But regardless of that, the full moon in Aquarius is highlighting the Aquarian archetype in our stream at the moment, and asking us to become more visionary with our views, you know, to see the bigger picture and step out of our personal space, which is Leo, and step into a larger perspective or view that includes humanity. It's also about our soul tribes, you know, friends that are really our family kind of thing. That's what the Aquarius energy brings up too. And also expecting the unexpected. You know, Aquarius is it's such a quirky energy. It brings about spontaneous, unpredictable activity. You know, and vibrations. So just be prepared for something really different to perhaps be shown to you. That's really important with your own personal journey of self-actualization, all that Leo stuff that we've been looking at the past few weeks. And Mercury is in Leo at this time as well, when we have this full moon, because it's moved out of Cancer and into Leo. I'm just going to share my screen just very quickly, and just bring up the chart. So this is the chart for the full moon. Okay, you can see it's at 22 degrees and should be about 24 minutes. And you can see, don't worry about the location because this is based in Australia, where I am. Naturally, it's going to change based on which part of the world you are in. But the important thing to note is, you know, all these planets here in Leo opposite that moon. Now, that moon doesn't really have many aspects, really, in terms of traditional aspects, right? The closest aspect is that square to Vesta. Look at Vesta, she's 22, the moon's 22, and the sun's 22. So her presence has something important to say there. And you know, as I said, it could just be some realization that is very much connected to perhaps the work. You know, a lot of sacrifices that you've been making regarding work, but at the cost of your own emotional sort of needs and responsiveness, right? And Juno is still here in Leo, and she's hovering around, you know, Venus and the Sun, and Mercury's moved into Leo. Now, by this point, Mercury's moved out of his shadow, and he's going to move very fast through Leo, actually, very fast, and he's going to get to Virgo within no time. What else do we have happening in this chart? Yeah, there's not a lot of aspects to this moon. So that's another reason why I decided to speak about Vesta, because she's exactly square that moon. As I said, though, you know, this doesn't, it's not a huge problem, but we are talking about some feminine principles here, because the moon is feminine, Vesta is feminine, and Venus is a feminine principle too, right? So there's three feminine principles forming a T-square. So that's something about our own inner divine feminine nature, something that needs to be understood or realized further when this full moon comes into Aquarius, but from a really objective, bigger picture level, as opposed to just our own inner subjective nature. Okay. What else did I want to say? I think that's basically it, guys. Really just wanted to make a 10-15 minute video. I don't think I've done that. I've probably gone about half an hour. Yet to make a 10-minute video. The day will come. Anyway, just wanted to share some reflections here about this full moon in Aquarius, which is actually quite a light energy, quite a light vibration compared to what we've had, you know, in the last 6 weeks or so. So it's good news. It's good news. I think we need, you know, something that's a little bit lighter. Also, though, just bear in mind that the moon in Aquarius is because Aquarius connects to electricity. It's an electrifying sort of energy. It can really be quite exciting, quite stimulating, but not intense in these sort of deeper, darker sort of domains. It's just it's a vibration that really opens us up and takes us out into connecting to soul, tribe, and family, like-minded people, and just having the ability to perhaps accept more of the differences that we recognize you know, in people in our personal life or around the world and so forth. It's the ability um, to have a mind that enables you to be really fair, where equality is really important, and it's not just about yourself. It's about everyone having the same sort of the same opportunities, you know, to be equal, as it were. So these are the sorts of themes that come up. But that the element of electricity and excitement and spontaneity and unpredictability is also there as well. So, you know, just be open and receptive to what that unpredictable thing might be that shows up, because again, this is going to be reflected through where this sun moon opposition lands in your birth chart. It is those areas of life that will produce something. Now, this full moon is a regular full moon. You know, it's not an eclipse, so it's not as potent as all these other uh, full moon and new moon eclipses that we've had, you know, the last 6 weeks or so. So that's why I'm saying this is more toned down. It's just more relaxed. It's not intense. It's not so personal. It's just about seeing the broader sort of picture, but keeping in mind that the journey you've been on with all this Leo vibration and the Lionsgate and everything that's been coming to you that you've been receiving, to now step into that full moon in Aquarius with total illumination and clarity about even where you're stepping into towards your future as well. But thinking in terms of connection with everybody, right? And having some equality and fairness on those levels, as opposed to just, you know, what you need yourself personally. Okay, so I'll leave it there for today. And just one final thing. I just wanted to say that esoterically, the moon, uh, very much in, it's the same in exoteric terms as well, but there's just a little bit more here. So the moon is always connected to our own attachments to our biological karma, instinctual emotional responsiveness, patterns of early family conditioning, um, all lunar influence type stuff, which is integrated into the whole mass consciousness, because the moon rules the public. The moon connects to everybody, really. I mean, we all have the moon in our chart, but what I mean is that the moon contains um, the past, right, of absolutely everything and everybody. And a lot of this speaks to our own past life matters, experiences, and so forth. So the moon in Aquarius and Uranus being the ruler, I see that as well as an opportunity to decondition some of these lunar um, biological karmic sort of imprints in inherited sort of stuff that we've, you know, that's retained in our body, in our emotional body, and in our mental body, long-term mental body, um, memory body rather. So Aquarius and Uranus is really about deconditioning. You know, it's about doing things differently, right? It's about stepping into um, what may not be accepted by the popular consensus mainstream reality or model, but it's also what's going to enable you to actually liberate yourself and just decondition that just that little bit, because this deconditioning that is spoken of strongly through evolutionary astrology, you know, it's like anything. We don't just wake up and we're deconditioned. we, you know, we've got to work through things. It takes, you know, it's everything is a process, and it's a development and it's an evolution, right, of our soul. Um, so it's like I said, you know, in the previous video, in the Lionsgate video, about the timing of the soul, right? The soul has its own timing. It's so true. So all these little transits that, you know, that just pop up, you know, like the moon, the full moon in Aquarius, these are opportune times. We have a full moon in Aquarius every year, right? But it's not the same every year. It's different because you're different. You're not the same that you were last year. Something about you would have changed in some kind of way, even if it's just ever so small. It doesn't matter. No, it's not about measuring in, you know, in that way, because one's own personal evolution and transformation, it's a private and personal thing. So nobody can make any definitions about it or judge it in any kind of way, how big, small, good, bad, whatever, just use simple language. So anyway, the point is that when we have these full moons and when we have these little transits, they are opportunities for us to work further into our own deconditioning and our own, evolutionary path. So enjoy the full moon in Aquarius. Last words. It's going to be fabulous. It's going to be weird, and yeah, don't be surprised if some weird things happen. But weird good, right? It's weird good. So just be open and receptive to that. See you guys soon. Much love and blessings. And thank you so much for listening and tuning in. And thank you to new subscribers. And thanks to all my previous subscribers that have been with me for a while. If you want to book in for a reading, just please email me directly and I can discuss with you whatever it is you need answered. And see you soon for an update, a more detailed update about the month of August when I get some time. Thanks.